Ay, 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 go crazy. Ay, 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 ay.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Escape from San Francisco podcast. I have two great guests on today. Today I'm at the Speakeasy Ales and Lager Brewery here in San Francisco, California, Hunters Point, one of the only black-owned breweries here in San Francisco. I have my guests John and Ahmad, and today we're going to be talking about Speakeasy, what's it about, the roles here, and also some of the great beer. So hopefully that you enjoy this episode and enjoy our conversation. So how you doing, guys? How you doing, John?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me out here. I do come here a lot. Like I was telling you earlier, you do run events on Saturdays, and he has so many great vendors that are part of the community here in San Francisco that come out here, and they always, um, you know, show much love to the people here and great beer, food, and if you want to buy plants or cookies or whatever someone's selling, there's always something going on here. And I know you guys do more than just Saturday events, and so if you want to like go ahead and talk a little bit about what Speakeasy is and what you guys do here.
Yeah, no problem. So a few years back, well, first of all, Speakeasy's been around in San Francisco since the mid late '90s. So plenty of people are familiar with the Big Daddy IPA and Prohibition and some of the older school beers that Speakeasy's always produced. A few years back, though, you kind of touched base on it. Speakeasy went under new ownership, and that new ownership is Hunters Point Brewery, which was started by Seth Butner, who's a black man from the South, actually, but moved out west and found his his start in like beer distribution and alcohol distribution and things like that. And then when Speakeasy became an available entity, he was he was the only one that was pursuant of purchasing the place to keep it open, to keep it going as a brewery, especially a brewery in a black neighborhood, now owned by a black man. It was really an important goal for him to keep this brand and this place alive. But that's where Hunters Point Brewery comes into play. So that's technically the mother brand or the brand that purchased Speakeasy. So now Speakeasy's produced under Hunters Point, but even though there's kind of a separation of beers and culture between the two brands, it is still one house and it is the same brewers, and the recipes have only improved and become more consistent, and we're starting to build our distribution again to be throughout California. So you'll be able to see the Speakeasy brand all over. Whereas the Hunters Point brand is something that I kind of took on under my wing when I came back here about 7 months ago. Started working here again, and that's where Ahmad comes into play. And what we started up with the Hunters Point brand, because it was basically an unused entity, we started up like a smaller pilot system type of brewery, compared to what the volume that Speakeasy produces. It's minuscule, but it's about the size of what like these smaller breweries in San Francisco are able to produce, and through that we're able to produce smaller batches of beers, more fun recipes using various different ingredients that wouldn't necessarily go in your traditional Speakeasy beer. And then also through that brand, we've started these Saturday markets that you mentioned about having all types of local entities and small businesses, primarily owned by people of color, coming through to showcase their artwork, their plants, their food, their desserts, whatever it may be. Um, well, we've also hired Ahmad here. Like I said, comes from him as well. He's our main designer for the Hunters Point Brewery brand, and he's done all of our beer labels for that since. And they're all labels that kind of reference some sort of, uh, you know, uh, fun niche part of San Francisco that we're all like, if you're from here, you kind of get it. If you're not from here, maybe you Google it, and you have a cool story to learn about, or some aspect of the Bay that we all grew up with. Um, and yeah, and then we've also started up under Hunters Point an internship program for uh, Black and Indigenous people of color who are looking to get into the beer industry, but have zero to no experience and may not know where their fit into the beer industry is. They just know they're passionate about beer, and so this internship program it shows not just the brewing, but the packaging, the cellaring, the sales aspects, the taproom aspects of running a brand, and all these sorts of things too. So we've just started that program up, and that's been really really cool for the community as well.
I didn't know even know you guys had that. So there's so much more that goes into just being a brewery. Like you said, you have really cool cover art. The weekend pass is like, really amazing, funny thing. If everyone knows it. If you've been in the Bay Area, you've probably taken the BART once, especially if you lived out here. Um, I know the Big Daddy IPAs is a classic staple, but going into more of what your company is like, or what the company is in together, like you're more than just a brewery and a label. You give back to the community, and by giving back to the community, you allow people to hold space here, to allow them to make a living for themselves, sell, and get other people engaged. And then you guys also offer that internship program, which is helping, Black and Indigenous people get their foot in the door. I don't know how it is in the brewery industry. I don't know. Per,
Mostly white.
that's what I was figuring, but I didn't know like how much of a stronghold do mostly white people have in the brewery business. I rarely go to a place that it is black or brown owned. It's mostly white people own the breweries, but I, what would it take to get more black and brown people into this space and owning something like this or creating good beer and great art and a space for people to come to. So that's why people like places like this are very important to the communities. And so I do want to talk to like what was your idea behind some of these designs and how did you come up with them?
Well, when it comes down for the designs that we ended up making for the Hunters Point Brewery brand, um, some of the ideas actually comes from John. Um, they're either suggestions or it's something about the city that I personally either forgot or didn't know. Personally, I love San Francisco history. There's a lot that I've learned when I was in continuation high school and just history that separates us from, of course, like anywhere else. That was just really interesting to know. And I was kind of a smartass around like my friends and family members and crew members and people of other communities because I'm always trying to share like city information. Like San Francisco colors is black and gold as much as like people of the Giants or the Golden State Warriors or the Niners. Like our city color is different from the teams that play here, and like who found the districts and just random little like pieces of like a history in the city that's out in plain sight, but people just walk by and not know anything about it at all. So to have the opportunity to be able to share something that I really just loved sharing, period, and also being around people that have the same type of ideas, it's been great. It's been fun.
How long does it take for one of these projects to start and complete? Like how long did it take you to make the weekend pass one? Is that the one you created?
Yeah,
How long did it take you to create that one?
I'll say all in all, maybe about a week.
So
Because
it's a pretty uh, smooth transition. And I was expecting it was gonna take months. To me, like I'm not a designer, so I was like, man, that's like a lot of work putting into that.
well, the crazy thing is I'm not really a designer either. I didn't. I mean, I did originally want to go to school for it, but then my direction changed, and I was working with kids for like over a decade. It was COVID that changed my direction. So it was COVID that ended up changing my direction when I had nothing else to do. So instead of teaching kids or trying to get used to doing Zoom, I just decided to get more into design. And my design partner, he wanted to start the whole clothing brand idea again. And in the midst of that, an opportunity to design the Hunters Point Brewery label came in. So from there, I started using the iPad Procreate program more, just figuring out how to do that. And then since my design partner went to the Art Institute and graduated and does graphic designing, he taught me Illustrator. So when I made the Weekend Pass and I think two of our other labels, that was just all through Illustrator, and it's still me learning how to use the program. So for people to show a lot of appreciation for the designs, how interesting they are, or how clean they look, it's really motivating for me to learn more about the program. So as Hunters Point Brewery grows, so does my design skills, and so does the graphics that are on the labels.
I mean, that's amazing being self-taught and learning how to come over time. Like doing all this podcast stuff. I had to teach myself. I mean, there's some a couple of people that I like to shout out. One of them, William Smith, that has helped me with the audio and video side of this, but just a lot of trial and error. And YouTube. YouTube helped me out so much on how to like do any of this. I didn't know anything. I didn't know the difference from 44.1 to 44 or 48 was a big difference on like the audio settings or in video. What's the difference from 24 frames per second to 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second, 4K to 1080p. I had no clue what any of that is, but it does make a difference um, as sort of the quality of the product that you're putting out. And I'm assuming that you learning so much over the time from when you just started to now is just great. And I, that makes me hit on another point is like traditional schooling. It's like I always thought you needed that in order to be successful, but it seems like more and more I'm meeting people that are self-taught and they are great designers or they're just great at what their craft, and it's about being dedicated to it and putting it out for for the people to see and seeing the quality of work in itself. So how has the community's perception of this or reaction has it been good? I know you mentioned that a little bit, like hearing good feedback from people. Like overall, like are people loving the Hunters Point? Are they? Or is this something that uh, it's like for you? It makes you get to that point where you can't wait for the next design or you can't wait for the next product to put out there for the masses.
When it comes down for the feedback that we end up getting, anytime whenever I'm working here or even when I'm not working, I'm still going to be coming around. Um, I would just hear from some people looking at the cans when we keep them on the table when it's not windy and feel like the wind is going to take it away. um, just people either asking questions about like, oh, like what is this, or like what does this mean, or people appreciating and getting the references. Like I was surprised that some people knew about Bummers and Lazarus when they looked at the can and seeing that's BNL and trying to read the small font on the banner and had like a conversation with me about it. It was like a good exchange to like have not only like people saying like, oh, this like art design looks dope, but also them sharing their experience with what it is that's on the can.
So what does it represent? I'm not from San Francisco. I've only been in the Bay Area since 2015. Is this like a local reference to something? And if it is, can you explain a little bit?
It might be easier for John to actually explain that one.
Okay, can I get this from John? I know this is the one that I'm drinking right now.
Yeah, that's the one you're drinking right
Yeah,
now.
it's tasty.
Yeah, the beer itself is this like North German pilsner that it's our brewer's last day today, but that was his like passion project on his way out. But the Bummer and Lazarus thing comes from like old like San Francisco lore, like Barbary Coast lore, back when San Francisco was only a few streets big, and Emperor Norton, who's this famous caricature of a human, roamed the streets as well. But Bummer and Lazarus were two dogs that roamed up and down downtown San Francisco, and it was a time when dogs kind of ran rampant, and there were even forces by the government here saying, catch dogs, kill them. It's time to like kind of get a handle on the amount of dogs in San Francisco, and but Bummer and Lazarus were always pardoned and excused. They were even like taken out of custody a few times uh, uh, when they got caught up. But they were famous because they're famous ratters. So rats were an inevitable issue in San Francisco when everything's built on top of everything else, and so basements would be filled with rats, and downtown businesses would give Bummer and Lazarus like a hunk of meat, a spoonful of stew or whatever they had to feed them, and then bring them down into their basement. And notoriously, Bummer and Lazarus would just kill all the rats, and then collect their food and then move on. And they literally lived like that. Like that was their San Francisco lore, their Barbary Coast lore. And I think one of them got poisoned, unfortunately, and the other one just died of natural causes. And I think it was Lazarus that died second, and his body ended up getting like stuffed. And I think Emperor Norton was actually at his funeral, like conducting the funeral for this dog. And just two famous dogs of the Barbary Coast back when San Francisco was even more weird, like kind of cool lore. And that's kind of what our all of the designs aim to do, is just highlight a different part of, whether it be historical or current or whatever, just highlight a part of the bay that like resonates with people or causes a story.
I learned something new today.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about San Francisco lore, just like a little bit here and there, but not really. That I mean, that's something that it's a great story, and I want to like look up more about that, see if there's like anything out there, like a documentary or something, because San Francisco's been around for a long time, and the changes over time has been probably crazy. And seeing how robust the city got built over time, and how much they built over top of things, having the massive fire back in the early 1900s, and how much that damage happened, and they built right back again. Like uh, that being said, when you take an account for that, and you're putting a San Francisco spin on something, um, that reception must be great for the people that get it. The people that get it, it's like, wow, they think about something like this. And for me, not being from here, not knowing it, I still like the can. The can's amazing. That's that. I didn't know what it meant, but now I know what it means. So now next time I see it, I'm gonna have that every time I get that. I'm like, oh, this is the story behind it, and it has a more meaningful impact when people buy that. Because I think that's, for me at least, that's what the point of buying craft beer is like having the cool art, tasting if the beer is going to be good or not, or whatever it might be, right? That's what I like. That's the fun of it. Instead of getting just like some regular corporate, you know, basic beer that's always the same year in, year out, nothing ever changes for it. But craft beers always come and go all the time, and there's always, you have to be innovative and get to that level. Um, is it really hard to put out a beer that will capture the audience? Because I know there's everything out there right now that's being tried, and so I'm not a really great creator about like artists or anything like that. So I can't imagine trying to come up with a new style or a new design or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the design of the beers has always been like, there's a balance between like, this is for us, by us, as far as like the Bay Area people. Like, it's a Bart Pass, it's Bummer and Lazarus, it's we did what we called Parrot Hill Pale Ale, and it's a reference to the wild parrots of San Francisco, but it's not. There's no such thing as Parrot Hill in San Francisco. It's just something that we kind of took out of context to make it still approachable. Parrot Hill Pale Ale rolls off the tongue easy enough. The design was approachable. You still enjoy the beer because the beer is delicious, but you're just because you might not get the reference to the wild parrots doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. Same thing. That's why we called it the B&L Lager. We're having trouble trying to come up with like Bummer and Lazarus. Those are like two long, weird names. It's like you can't call something a Bummer IPA. That sucks. Like no one's gonna want it. Or a Lazarus Lager. It just sounds weird. I don't know. No one would get it. So trying to come up with that balance of like, yeah, the people that get it like they get it and they enjoy it, versus like, people that don't get it can still enjoy it. And usually, like with the fine print of, or not fine print, but like the little, like, 2, 3, 4 sentence blurb that we add to the can adds like a little reference to the can art, and at least something for you to Google, like, at the end of it.
I didn't know you guys do that to your cans. I mostly every time I come, um, I hardly ever get the cans because you get in the cups when you get here. So I don't ever get a chance to ever look at it that long. And so that's another thing I didn't know is that you guys are putting tribute to it, right? You're making sure people understand the story behind it, which I think a lot of other companies don't really put that emphasis on that. They just want to put like a cool design on it, and there's really not no story to it. And to me, I'm a big sucker for stories. I love to know a story behind something. And if I know something, a story about it, I'm more likely going to buy it. I'm more
Right.
likely going to purchase it because it's more meaningful. Even though it is a beer, it has that more meaningful impact, and I will buy it. Um, that I don't know if that's just marketing. I mean, that's just like a good way to actually, sell to people, right? The point is to obviously to sell the beer and to have people enjoy it and to make profit off it in the end. But getting to that point, it is challenging, right? Coming to that point of just realizing, all right, we're just gonna call it B and then put the Bummer and Lazarus like underneath and everything. Like I love that cool design, uh, like the way you guys have the banners on it, the way that it it has that font, and then it has like the two dogs at the end on the sides. Like you killed it on this one. Like this one, you killed it. That one's it.
Yeah, everyone likes loggers and dogs, so it makes it really approachable, And then the fact that there is a story behind it, just kind of, I feel like, gives it that like little wow factor, like, or that connectivity factor of like, oh man, I've been on Kearney where those dogs were, like I've seen those buildings that they've entered, you know what I mean? Or like Weekend Pass is cool. It's, being from the Bay, you automatically recognize the BART map, right? And you recognize the BART card. And then, you might realize that the numbers on here are, Bay area codes. So, like, it's still like a reference. Oh, like, I'm from there. Like, oh, 510, that's on there. I'm from 650. Like, that's on there. I'm from there. So, like, it's for us, by us, sort of thing, in that sense of like. But if you've been to the BART one time in your life, you're like, okay, this is cool. It's a tribute to their, BART system.
Yeah, the bar cart. Is that something that you came up with that concept, the Weekend Pass?
No, so that was a collab beer between us, Hunters Point Brewery, and uh, Mitch, who is Hop Bay, which is his own brand that he's like developed merch under, and he's actually the most recent person to go through our internship program, and this was like the result of it was our collab beer, and he's looking to do big things with his brand coming up, but this was his like kind of intro into the industry, as far as like behind the scenes work and stuff, and he's enjoyed it so much that he's like here brewing with the guys on the regular, just like, hanging out and gaining it, soaking up all the knowledge and everything. But actually, the weekend pass was, Mitch of Hoppe and Ahmad here just kind of coming together. I had some, some design feedback, which I, is minimal, but it's always there. I'm usually just the guy that writes like the couple sentences at the end.
That's
But
some of the most important work, though.
I mean, yeah, like it helps tie things together, but it's
I was
it's
gonna ask,
killer
are
what
you
they put
familiar?
together.
You're familiar with De La City, right?
Yeah.
The brand.
Yeah.
And he had dropped a shirt where he has a bunch of Muni tickets in his shirt, and it's kind of like intertwined in it and everything too. So that's like a cool spin on that as well. If you know the Muni, the Muni tickets, the different colorations of them. If you know the BART, the BART ticket. Like it's just like those are just what catches people, right? Because if you
Right.
know it, it's a symbol of something, and you're able to gravitate towards it more. And I think that's very genius in behind coming up with something like that. So much props to the two individuals that came out, Ahmad and his partner, and what's his name for the one from the hops,
Mitch
Mitch.
from
Mitch,
Hoppe. Yeah.
that's really good. Just genius idea of getting into that, into that space and coming up with that point. Um, I was gonna ask both of you, what is some of your favorite, like all time, like craft beer that you like, whether it's like brand or style, lager, pilsner, whatever it might be, or like just the art on the cover. And some of them for me, like I really like the Mac Dre one.
Oh yeah.
That one's really cool. That one always catches my attention.
Yeah.
Always gonna grab it. It's not my favorite one, honestly. The quality of it's okay, but just the can is really cool. I know there's a couple like Warrior ones that just came out, and I really like those ones. Those ones are really cool. Another one, I don't know why I really like it, but it's really shitty beer. It's like Montucky, like it's just like the coldest snack
Yeah.
or a little cold
The
snack or
cold
something.
snack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just that one, just those little cool little designs and like little things that gravitates more, even though they might not be like the best quality beers, they're just
Yeah.
like really cheap or whatnot. But for both of you, what do you like, and what are some of your favorites?
Man, I came up in like the old hype days of like craft beer. So like everyone started like with stouts and Belgians back then, and then you like started seeing more and more of these IPAs, and IPAs were everywhere, and it was like how hoppy could you get it? How bitter could you get it? Like the IBUs going over 100, and it was like, and then the shift occurred of like where it became like, no, how little IBU can we get into this? How little bitterness can we get into this IPA, and how fresh and juicy can we make it? So I've been into beer for a while to see all this stuff happen, but I definitely say. Influentially for me to get into the industry, Speakeasy was definitely one of the brands. Always loved their marketing. Always loved the fact that they were from San Francisco, even though, it didn't. It could have been a brand from kind of anywhere with the marketing that it had, but if it's from home. Nowadays, I drink probably more sour beer than anything. Sante Darius is definitely my go-to brand and brewery. Love Humble Sea as well. Basically, everything out of like Santa Cruz, Monterey has been really solid these days, and um, you know, Temescal in the East Bay is killing it. Almanac doing a good job over on Alameda Island. Yeah, just the beer game here is so strong. It went from the industry, or like the fandom went from like how can we get all these hard to get beers from all over the country, all over the world, to now it's like we've got phenomenal beer all over the place now. And yeah, like marketing definitely plays a role into the success of the beers, but yeah, I definitely encourage just trying as much of it as possible.
Yeah, the Bay Area has some really good beers, like some really good breweries and some really good like 21st Amendment. I really do like,
Classic.
21st is a classic. Anchor Steam. You have Drake's out in Oakland. But I also like some. I'm from Fresno, so like I really do like. Is it Route 99? What's the one back in Fresno? I got to think about it again. But there's a couple ones back in Fresno that I really do like. One of them's called Half Dome, that I really do like, and I'm trying to think about Sequoia Brewery. So Sequoia Brewery is like a big one back in Fresno that I really do like. Half Domes are really good quality beers. But I'm not much of a big fan of like the higher IBUs. I'm not a really big IPA or double IPA individual. Like Lagunitas, I like it, but I'm not really into that. But for you, Ahmed, what do you like?
Ooh, let's see. I feel like my start as well was Big Daddy, was the Speakeasy beers, and after a while, me and my brother, we just mainly stuck with drafts. So it's been a while since I've really had cans at that time, and it wasn't until COVID that we really started to get into going to certain spots that were still open, certain bars that were still open that were selling beer by the cans, and everything out of Humble Sea was just dope. It'd be maybe about like every 2.5 weeks, there's like a new can over at the spot off of Divisadero that we'd go to. And not only was the beer that they were making great, but their cans were also very interesting. Never seen an all white can before that had artwork on it. Didn't have a label seam either. And all of it, all their labels were pretty much these like cartoon designed puns after certain things that you would know, like instead of what was that mixed drink called? Foggy and Stormy? I can't remember what it was, but they had a beer called, I think it was like Foggy and Stormy. Then they had like a pun for Ren and Stimpy. They called it Ren and Shrimpy. Since they were just like close to the water, then unfortunate.
You like the puns ones?
The pun ones were interesting.
Shrimp don't krill my vibe.
Shrimp don't krill my vibe. They created that one?
The unfortunate Wheel of Fortune. It's like they
What brewery
made
is this?
Humble Sea.
Humble Sea. Okay, yeah.
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Yeah.
So they just had like a lot of stuff that just like caught our attention just reading it. And every single time we're there, it's just like, oh, what's the new pun that they got this time? And right after it, it's just like the ingredients already sound like it's going to be something that's very interesting.
So what is the story behind this one? The how you say it?
Zavala's Valhalla.
Zavala's Valhalla. So is that something you created, or is that something that you're a part of?
That one was it was like a secret beer that was made by one of our brewers. They didn't put it on the beer list because it was a beer that was made for one of the guys that works in the back that's been pretty much working here longer than everybody that's currently here. He's been here for 20 years. And his last name is Valhalla.
Zavala.
Oh, his last name is Zavala. When we came with the Valhalla, it's pretty much like it was the
His heaven.
yeah. It was his heaven. So when they came to us with the ideas that they had, well, Zach and John, we just started trying to like figure out how can we make it look kind of like Viking, Asgardian, and just as badass as possible in black and white, but also using his head, his like actual head from a photo. And my design partner Randall, he just went to work and for about I think 7 hours just pushed that one out. So he found a good throne to sit him on, a good like cloak for him to wear, and then he found like an axe that was in the photo, and he's just like, I'm keeping the axe in there. It's like he's supposed to be holding a beer. It's like I know, but he'll look more badass with an axe.
It does look really amazing. I'm gonna get some separate B-roll of that. So when I do publish this, I'm put it up there so people can actually see, because this is some detail that people really need to see. It's really high quality. When you go from the axe that's sitting there to him holding the big mug and having what is the top of the can?
Oh no, it's not. Oh, the top of the can.
Or right here, sorry. These two things right here on the side.
Oh, that's just part of the throne.
So that's part of the throne too. So it just it's all thought out really well, and it just goes together well. And then you have the front of it. So the front of the can is like is appealing too. Like that draws me in, just even the front of it. But then even you have the back of the can, it just even makes it even more better. Like it rounds it out so well, and that's a really thought out design. That's props again to you and the designers here that are creating this cover art for this beer, and also to the brewer that created it. So, yeah, you guys are killing it. So, out of all the designs that you've been a part of, or the brewery or the beers that you make here, I gotta ask, which one's your favorite here?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Because we had, let's see, I think we made 9 labels. No, we've made 9 labels that are printed so far. So that's 9 beers. It's neck and neck. It's still got to be our Town and City Hazy Double IPA that we made. That was our 3rd beer. And I think
No, second, first.
that was the third label that we made, but it was the second beer that got released.
Yeah, it was like the premiere of Hunters Point Brewery was Town and City, and then
The
the
Bayshore Yard.
Yard. Yeah, Bayshore Yard was like an Italian pilsner that paid homage to old shipyard, or not old shipyard, old train yard in Hayes Valley that would be like notoriously tagged up all the time. So we got like the likeness of a train car, side of a train car, and Ahmad did like a dope digital graffiti work on the side of this train car, and that was our first Pilsner release, and then along with it was our a hazy double IPA that we did in collaboration with Hella Coastal. Those guys, shout out to Hella Coastal for sure. We are the only black-owned brewery in the Bay Area as it stands right now. But Hella Coastal is a black-owned brewery that's in production, meaning they're getting their licenses, their facilities, their equipment together. So they'll be the first black-owned brewery in Oakland, and but without even owning a brewery space yet, those guys have really grown their brewery brand, and they've done all sorts of collaboration work with us, with other black-owned breweries throughout the Bay Area, with other non-black-owned breweries throughout the Bay Area. They're just crushing it. They're producing beer all over the place. But yeah, the Town and City was our collab beer, and it's dope because we're from the city, and so we had like our half of the can silhouetted of like famous San Francisco stuff, and then their half of the can was a silhouette of famous Oakland buildings, Oakland spots, things like that, and hence Town and City, they're the town, we're the city, and it was a very harmonious beer. It was fucking delicious.
Yeah, I miss that label. I miss that label. I miss that beer.
Yeah, people still come in talking about it, asking about it. It was a good beer. We'll probably make it again. It was a hazy double IPA. We're always in rotation in the back, like I said, with like our smaller tanks. So we're always producing some sort of lighter lager beer. Right now we've got like a Mexican lager going in the back. And then we're always producing like either a pale ale or an IPA, a saison or a double IPA, something in that rotation. But because it's a small batch of beer, we rotate through it pretty quickly. Zavala's Valhalla is a West Coast double IPA. So we're not in a rush to do another double IPA right now, but it's definitely on the list to come back as a style.
Double IPA for me is too much. I remember one time I didn't know about craft beers. I'm from Fresno, from a small country town, and back home we drink Coors, Fireball, and Bud Light, and we didn't know what craft beer was. At least I didn't. And coming out here to the Bay Area, going to Cal State East Bay 2015, there was a micro craft brewery there called Brews and Brats in downtown Hayward. And me and my buddy would go all the time. We were just trying all the beers all the time. So that's how I got introduced to it, trying all these beers. And first time I ever had a double IPA, I didn't know how strong it was. And so I had two of them. And then it didn't hit me. And I'm like, why am I so drunk right now? Like, I had no clue. Like, I just thought it was just two beers. Like, I didn't understand. And, I was just like, why does it come in a goblet? Like, why does it come like, how come I just can't get a normal size? And they're like, yeah, you'll see. And yeah, I saw it right. For